before Mr Mackay resumes, I wonder, is there any update on the webcast live streaming? We had a number of people who were hoping to watch that, and we had understood it may be effective today, but I don't know whether there's an update at all.
The latest I have is that this morning's episode has been uploaded, but we're not yet live. I can. Is that current? Yep. That's the message I'm getting from the back.
Is there any likelihood of it being live? Do we know?
Perhaps you'd like to send someone to have a discussion with Ewan at the back there.
We are continuing to try, and there's every chance it should work at some point.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, anything else before Mr Mackay continues? Thank you.
Thank you, sirs. Good afternoon, Mr Wright. Before lunch, Mr Wright, we looked at two of the key views, and this afternoon I'm going to take you to a few more of those, not all of them you'll be relieved to hear, but a few more, please. So it's essentially the same exercise, having parts 3 of your heritage statement for the 2015 and 2017 proposals, and also, usefully, to have the visualisations to hand if need be. Can we look first of all at viewpoint 03C from North Bridge, which you'll find on page 32 of the 2015 HIA and page 39 of the 2017 version. Excuse me. Excuse me. And first of all, dealing with the baseline image, the existing image before the visualization of the development, can we see from this viewpoint, it's possible to see the green area on the mid-slope between St Andrew's House and the Principal Hamilton building.
Yes, that's correct.
And at the moment that forms an important part of the setting of the Royal High School.
It does, in part, even if it is the current condition, whereas some of the landscape which is being looked at the moment relates to the work carried out by the Property Services Agency in the 90s, which has come to some sort of maturity. So that has an impact on what is seen as the Royal High School.
But looking to the baseline image, we can see the western elevation, we can see the temple, and we also see a green back cloth to the view from that particular perspective. Is that right?
Yes, and one would imagine that with increased management of the landscape, which is part of the Carlton Hill management plan, that this view could change also in terms of taking out some of the scrub vegetation which is on the hillside, and thereby revealing more of the rock face of the hill. So yes, it would illustrate part of the hill at that point, yes.
So I think what you're saying is, in terms of the current context, there's a green slope on the mid-slopes between St Andrew's House and the Hamilton building, and your view is that possibly those slopes will be managed better in the future, which will, I think, according to your evidence at least, will bring the hill back to closer to the way it was when Hamilton conceived of its design. Is that right?
Yes, it should improve the setting, yeah.
And either way, Mr Wright, insofar as the area between the St Andrew's House and Hamilton building is concerned, one won't be able to appreciate that if either of the 2015 or 2017 proposals are consented. Simply because you won't be able to see it. Is that right?
Not wholly. I think because the wings are stepped back, there will be some visibility between the west elevation and the new wing. To verify that, I would have to have larger images. You'll appreciate looking at these small images at low resolution here. It's not necessarily easy to see that. Apart from that, I'd have to look at the description of the view, I think, in order to confirm it.
Well, by all means do that, Mr. Wright. I thought we'd established, by reference to the same viewpoint in evidence yesterday, that the gap that currently exists between the built development at St Andrew's House and the Hamilton building would be closed over, and that was a compromise that had to be reached in terms of the design and its relationship to landscape capacity as identified by Rankin Fraser. I didn't think that was in dispute.
I wouldn't say that element is in dispute, but it is how much of the hillside is visible to the right of the development, in other words, between the west elevation of the Royal High School and how much of the hill might be visible there.
Well, can we agree that if it's possible to see anything, that is imperceptible in the visualisations which we're looking at the moment?
Yes, and equally I might comment that it's quite difficult to see the proposed development also within the view.
Well, that leads us also back to the issue about angle of light, reflectivity, and so on and so forth. Can we focus on the point I'm putting to you at the moment? Do you dispute what appears to be perfectly obvious from these images, that if either the 2015 or 2017 proposals were consented, there would be substantive, if not complete, loss of all of the green setting, which is currently the landscape setting for the Royal Hamptons building? Do you dispute that or not?
I dispute it in the sense there is a difference clearly between schemes 1 and 2, where the impact of scheme 2 is less, and more of the skyline is visible, which is part of the area to which you're referring. It is part of the setting in which the building appears.
Mr. Wright, are you disputing that the mid-slope, the green landscape, the landscape that we can see on the mid-slope, in the current baseline photograph, are you saying that any of that would be retained to any meaningful extent between the St Andrew's House on the west and the ridgeline of the Hamilton building? I appreciate that on the western extension for the 2017 proposal, because the height of the building has been reduced, there would be some green space left above the building. But between the step profile of St Andrew's House and the Hamilton building, there wouldn't be any of that left, would there?
I think in all fairness, to answer that, I'd need to see the large-scale visual that relates to this within the Heritage Impact Assessment.
It's a similar view but not identical. If you look please at VP-03A, again from North Bridge, it doesn't seem to be a viewpoint from viewpoint C, but we look at A, please.
Could I ask that the comparable image is produced, so I can look at it?
If you give me one moment, I'll try and find that then, Mr. Wright. You'll find it at CD179 on page electronic 23. I don't think the hard copy has got a page number as such, but it's the visual appendix M4, CD179.
Could you please give me that electronic page number again?
Of course, sir. Page 23. Is it 20? 21?
It's 3C, isn't it?
23.
1310, right. That's it as it is now. Yeah.
So by reference to what you have now in front of you, can you now confirm the point I put to you a moment ago?
I can confirm there is no gap between the development and the Royal High School. It is visible.
Now, thank you. Now, in relation to the 2015 scheme, which we're going back to CD 26, in terms of the impact, despite that loss and noticeable change in the setting of the Hamilton building, and perhaps there's a prior question I should put to you first to understand your take on it, Mr. Wright. It was a key component of Hamilton's design, was it not, that the building would sit on the artificial terrace that had been created for it and be viewed as a monument, and to that extent freestanding. Now, whilst it's not a freestanding monument, its historic setting and current setting emphasises monumentality because there's no other built development immediately adjacent to it. Would you acknowledge that?
Yes, I'm grateful to you for clarifying the point that it isn't a monument, that it is monumental. Yeah.
So with that caveat, you accept what I put to you?
Yes, I accept that, yes.
Now, notwithstanding that change, you describe the impact as negligible beneficial. Now, can we leave aside for one moment whether it's adverse or beneficial, because that will be a matter for judgment ultimately, and focus on the magnitude of impact. Now, if we look back, please, to your methodology at page 31 of the 2017 assessment. I think insofar as this aspect is concerned, it's the same approach, whether it's the 2015 or 2017 assessment. So if we look at page 31 of your 2017 assessment, there you set out what amounts to the various categories of impact and magnitude of change. Do you have that?
On page 30?
Yes, page 31. It's your evaluation criteria 2. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Now, at 6.4.3, quite properly, you say in bold, changes can be either beneficial or adverse, and assessed without regard to the heritage value. But then you set out what the magnitude of impact is. Firstly, no change, then negligible, minor, and all the way up to major. And for the change to be negligible, these are slight changes to historic building elements or setting that hardly affect it. Now, having regard to the line of questioning I pursued with you a moment ago, can we agree that whatever the level of impact may properly be set at, it's certainly not negligible?
It is how the primacy of the building is viewed within that scene is a matter that I've taken into account, and how that reflects how Hamilton may have seen that view in his perspectives and other ways in which the building has appeared in history.
So your approach is again essentially and dominated by the visual impact. Do not accept the broader proposition that in terms of how one understands and how one appreciates the attributes of OUV, in other words, the purpose of the exercise, the change in the setting to the Royal High School as a consequence of the loss of the green landscape on Carlton Hill is anything but slight, and one which hardly affects the setting of the Hamilton building. Would you agree in hindsight, if nothing else, Mr. Wright, that undervalues or underrepresents the magnitude of impact?
I think it comes back to what is preserved of the building in the views, accepting that some change would occur to its setting, It's also the distance at which it is seen, and the position or the location of the building within the wider setting of the hill is also taken into account.
So again, issues about the distance at which the scene is viewed from are the types of issues that we'd expect to find in a landscape and visual impact assessment, perhaps not in a WIA assessment. Is it your position and your evidence that in forming a view as to both the value of the asset that's being assessed and also the magnitude of impact, the distance at which the viewer is from the heritage asset is a factor which you take into account?
It has to be. I can't see how there's any other way of looking at it. It is really what you see from the particular viewpoint and what else is within that cone of vision.
And that, in a nutshell, is your approach to the whole assessment, isn't it?
No, as we've discussed before, it isn't, and neither can it be. It takes into account a whole series of factors, which I hope I've made clear in the evidence I've given.
So your evidence to this inquiry is that despite the fact that this viewpoint shows Carlton Hill, the Nelson's Monument, Hamilton Building sitting proud, at the moment anyway, on the ledge as it was intended, despite all of that, the magnitude of impact is negligible for both schemes. Is that your position?
What I'm taking into account is what is seen within that view. It's the prominence of St Andrew's House, the prominence of the Waverley Court buildings within the foreground, which is part of that scene, looking at the Waverley Valley formation and looking at the far distance of the site, and the position of the temple of the Royal High School within that overall assembly, and the degree to which those elements, which are of primacy to understanding the OUV, are affected by the changes that are being made.
I understand you hold a particular view as to the success of the design, Mr. Wright, but what I'm exploring with you at the moment is the level of impact. And on any view, there would be a very noticeable, if not significant, change to the setting of the Royal High School, which is one of the key aspects, and indeed, in the words of Commos, is fundamental to the conveyance of OUV. So if that is the case, how can it possibly amount to a negligible change, i.e. a slight change to historic building elements or setting that hardly affect it? That's not an accurate description of what's happening here, is it?
I maintain that it is within that scale.
Can we move please to Waterloo Place, viewpoint 4. Now, starting with 04D, I don't propose to go into all of these in a great amount of detail, Mr. Wright. But can I take a few points from you in relation to this, please? First of all, in terms of the description of the view, is this still Waterloo Place, or have we now moved into Regent Road? Or maybe you can just identify where that threshold is, by reference to the photographs that we see.
I don't think I can identify or confirm to the inquiry exactly where Regent Road starts and Waterloo Place finishes.
All right.
So it's simply a point on a journey.
Well, that's kind of what I want to address with you. This is one point in a journey, and the reporters will need to experience that for themselves, walking along the approach from the west. An historical point of detail, I take it that because the pupils tended to come from the new town, who were attending the Royal High School, they would tend to use the northmost pavement when walking to school or indeed walking home from school. Would that follow? And I notice, for example, that the viewpoints tend to be from the northern pavement rather than the one that's close to Regent's Road, to the St Andrews High Sub.
Once more, I was not party to where the viewpoints were selected from.
Right. Now, there's a debate between yourself and Mr. Robb as to the extent to which these views might have been interfered with by the jail complex currently occupied by St Andrews House. Now, I don't want to get into that in a huge amount of detail, Mr. Wright, but can we agree to certain basic facts so that the reporters have a clear chronology, if you like? First of all, in 1792, the Bridewell was constructed. That's the middle division, is that correct?
That is correct. It was finished in 1795.
Right, thank you. In 1817, Carlton Prison was constructed. That's the West Division.
I've accepted these points about which there should be no doubt in my recognition.
Yes, well, with respect...
rebuttal recognition.
With respect, because this is done by way of exchange of rebuttal recognitions, I've certainly found it difficult to actually get clarity on the key dates. So can we just bear with me for 2 minutes, please? 1850, the Debtors' Prison constructed, and that's the East Division. Is that right?
It may have been started earlier than that. I can't give a precise date for it, but it is around the mid-1840s that it was undertaken, yes.
And you make a point that it was identified in plans dating from the early 1820s, is that right?
I distinguish between the plans that are later that demonstrate that building and demonstrate a building for which designs were shown on a particular map, which is 1819, which is Kirkwood's map. So I simply make the point that it was always known that there was going to be a jail on that site and that would have some sort of impact on the site of the Royal High School, and therefore that Hamilton would have taken it into account. There's also to clarify in terms of the inquiry that also at that time the surrounding walls, which appear in later photographs, had also been erected as part of the works carried out in 1817
right.
for the western side.
And those walls were altered in about 1883, 1887 when there was a reconfiguration of the whole site. Is that right?
That may well be the case. I cannot testify to that.
And then in the 1930s, the jail complex was demolished to make way for St Andrews House.
Yes, in terms of dates, the demolition I think started in advance of that, but it was round about that time that happened.
A point you make is that at points during this journey, at least, and I'm not sure whether you mean the whole journey or just points of the journey, views to the Hamilton building would have been obscured by the high wall and the buildings at the jail complex. Is that correct? And you do that by reference to historic photographs in particular.
I can't do it in relation to historic photographs because there are none.
Well, can we just look, please, then, at CD 174? And if we go to the 1880s image, which is on page 90 of that document. Electronic page is 105.
Sorry, when I say there are none, I was aware that there was this image in the Heritage Statement, in Part 1 of the Heritage Statement, but it's not entirely comparable in terms of where you'd be on the pavement looking at the site. That was really the point that I was making. And that this is the only image that I've come across other than the Begbie image, which is also included in the Heritage Statement, which is only at the end of the journey.
All right, well, for what it's worth then, can we just look at the image? And I appreciate it seems to be taken at elevation looking down on the procession. But in the text to the left of the image, you're saying, while the photographer's scene captures the cavalry procession circa 1818 in Waterloo Place, the image is one of the very few capturing the creation of the chasm created by the height of the wall encircling the jail. The East Pavilion can be seen in the distance. Now, I take it you mean the West Pavilion, not the East Pavilion, is that right?
Yes, I'm guilty sometimes of confusing my East and West.
Aren't we all? But that's what's seen straight ahead, if you like, in the image.
Yes, in that image, that's correct, yes.
Now, it might not be very clear in the reproduction of the photograph, but do we also see another building with immediately to the left of the pavilion, partially obscured by the foliage? As I say, it's not very clear on the photograph and the reproduction of the photograph, but is that also part of the Hamilton building?
It's actually very difficult to say what is shown. And I had a careful look at this image from the source that was available to me, and I suspect that the photograph is taken after the gate lodge had been erected rather than before, but it is very indistinct at that point. But I think part of that mass is likely to reflect the location of the west elevation of the Royal High School. Right.
So it would appear then that at least from this point on the approach from the west, there would have been views of the west part of the Hamilton building at this time, notwithstanding the presence of the high wall around the jail complex. Is that correct?
I think at times on that route, and considering that we would, to be comparable, we would need to be down at the lower level, at pavement level, on either side of the pavement. But there is a rise in the centre of the road, a sort of gentle rise. It's all part of Stevenson's design, so all of these things have an impact on what it is you see. And certainly in terms of the gate lodge is something that does appear within that view. But I wouldn't dispute that there would be glimpses to be had of the Royal High School at points on the journey.
Well, that's the first point then. Second point, you're suggesting that the gate lodge is interfering with the views on the approach. Can we look at another photograph that you have at electronic page 75? This is the 1927 image, I think. Yes, the 1927 aerial photo.
Could you give me the page? I suspect it's the beginning of part of essay.
It's page 60.
3, is it?
Page 60, Mr. Wright.
Yes, I have the image.
Now, do we see in this image, which again requires a degree of interpretation given it's an aerial view, but do we see that the gate lodge is to some extent tucked in away at the bend in Carlton Hill, thereby leaving views from Waterloo Place towards the western elevation and also the western pavilion?
I note the location in which it appears and its size, but I also note in the evidence given to the inquiry in APP 53 the appearance of that in relation to long-distance views on Waterloo Place, some of which coincide with the view in question here, which is view 004C. I'd also draw the attention to the inquiry to the size of the present buildings, which appears in many historic images, and the degree to which historically there had always been coalescence between the Royal High School, parts of the Royal High School, and the jail buildings and the encircling wall. This is something which historically has always been the case, and which changed when St Andrew's House had been erected in the late 1930s. And probably, I think, for the benefit of the inquiry, I think it would have improved visibility to the Royal High School rather than
Well, that brings me to the next image, please. If you look at the image on page 70, this one's from the early 1930s. That's on E85.
Yes, I have it. Yeah.
And again, accepting the general point that the actual extent of visibility will alter depending on exactly where one is on the approach, that image does seem to suggest that there would be views towards the western elevation, albeit, as no doubt you'll point out, partially affected by the new planting which has been put in place adjacent to the western elevation.
I'm grateful to you for making that observation, because it is one that I've made from 1880s. It's not just the gate lodge which affects the visibility, but also the degree to which there is vegetation in front of the west elevation, which continued for some years thereafter. Yeah.
And I think we can agree that the strip on the curve and the bend just before the Hamilton building, there was in the original design, the original landscape design, an intention to put some planting there, but the trees or foliage that we can see immediately adjacent to the western elevation, that wasn't an original feature of the original landscape design, was it?
So could I ask if you mean the vegetation which is in the strip which runs from the west pavilion?
Indeed, to the gates, the school gates. Those were marked on the original landscape design, but the trees immediately adjacent to the western elevation were not.
As far as can be told, they weren't. I think the intention had always been that these would be fairly low rather than mature trees, whereas the trees that are closer to the east playground in what has sometimes, I think, been referred to as common ground, which is probably not the case in terms of ownership. But those have always, I think, as part of Playfair's scheme, the part of Stark's inheritance, have been allowed to go to maturity by comparison. Yeah.
I don't want to look at every step in this journey, but we can get to the point where Salisbury Crags and Arthur's Seat is becoming more prominent in the view. If we look at 4A,
can I ask which of the schemes, is it both schemes at the same time that we're looking at?
Unfortunately, Mr. Wright, because of the nature of this inquiry, we have to do both. Now, it's unusual in a city context, and it's something that's recognised in the OUV for the World Heritage Site, that you would have open views out to significant landscape features such as Calton Hill and the Salisbury Crags, and that's well expressed in these images, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And so then, whether it's the 2015 or 2017 proposal that we're looking at, the introduction of the western bedroom extension will have a significant impact on the understanding of that illusion of countryside in the city, won't it?
I think it takes us back to the definition of Rus in Urbe, to which you were referring before, in that it requires both buildings and landscape in which to work, in which the landscape features here are particularly powerful and are visible on the whole of the journey. We're taking here one final image in that journey, in that sequence.
I appreciate that, Mr. Wright, but you know, short of taking on every step of the journey, I'm taking you deliberately to this point because it's important, isn't it? This is the point at which you start to appreciate the western elevation of the Hamilton building at close quarters. This is the point where the landscape opens up, where you do have built elements in the view. On the right of your view, you have St Andrew's House, and very shortly, if not already, you have the Hamilton building. So this is a crucial point, isn't it? Where things are opening up. The juxtaposition between built form and landscape is becoming very obvious, and yet you say in your assessment that the change, the impact is minor, despite the introduction of very obvious new substantial buildings in a contrasting architectural style. Now, the point I'm putting to you again is that can't possibly be right. The level of impact, well, we can debate all day about whether it's beneficial or not, but insofar as the level of impact is concerned, it's an underrepresentation of the impact, isn't it? Because it's a significant change in the understanding of that illusion of countryside in the city, amongst other aspects of OUV.
The point that I make in that sequence, and I think the sequence is important rather than taking a singular view, is that there is the understanding of where the landscape is, and the point at which it will be revealed is no different to the journey that is described in the perambulations by Colin McWilliam, which I reproduced within the Heritage Statement. It simply postpones that point at which the appreciation of the landscape comes.
Even taking that answer for what it is, the very fact that it's postponed is in itself a significant change, isn't it?
I wouldn't agree necessarily that it is. There is the awareness of the landscape, and it is also the fact that the landscape here is framed for a point. I think you indicated that at around this point the Royal High School would become visible, but in fact I think that takes us, we have still a while to go before that happens, and this is the point at which, the point where it would have been visible in the 1829 scheme as the completed design by Hamilton, it would be postponed even further as a result of the gate lodge. And I think this takes us back to the debate or the discussion as to on which side of the road would you travel upon in order to get that view of the Royal High School, and which would then comply more closely with how Hamilton had intended his building to be seen.
So is your position then that whether this impact is more significant or not depends on what side of the street you're on, the north pavement or the south pavement?
No, it isn't, because there are other views on the other side of the street, but it is the completion of a journey, which is what this sequence refers to. The narrative that then follows for the point at which the view is taken from the west side of the street is a different one, because it starts another journey looking down towards the landscape and how the building then relates to that landscape within that view.
I mean, you're careful to emphasise now that it's part of an experience as you approach this point, but your assessment is in relation to specific viewpoints. In this viewpoint, you identify clause 3.8 and clause 4.8-7, which is the part of the management plan which emphasises the illusion of the countryside in the city. Now, in terms of understanding the impact on that attribute, there is a significant change, because you've introduced a large built structure which takes up approximately a third, maybe slightly, approximately a third of the profile of Salisbury Crags and Arthur's Seat. That, on any view, must be a significant change.
I think it depends on the scheme that you're referring to as to the volume of how much of the view is lost. It's quite different in Scheme 2 compared with Scheme 1.
So you're highlighting that insofar as Scheme 1 is concerned, there is an issue about the potential for the introduction of this western wing having the potential for an adverse impact on the OUV attributes that are identified as being relevant to this particular viewpoint, and there are many of them that are identified as being relevant.
Yes, I've said that very clearly in the previous views.
and notwithstanding that, somehow you arrive at a negligible beneficial impact.
It'll be for the reasons that are given on the following page.
Yes, which is the point we discussed a moment ago about appreciation of the outstanding view over the Old Town towards the Royal Park having been delayed, but it's not lost at the end of the sequence. So that brings me back to the point I put to you earlier, that the very fact that the appreciation of the OUV over the Old Town towards the Royal Park has been delayed is in itself a significant change. Now, you may have a view about whether it's a beneficial change but the point I'm putting to you at the moment is that it's certainly more than a negligible change in the understanding of that aspect of OUV.
I think within the description of the sequence and the levels of impact that are applied to the previous images, I think it'll be obvious why it is given a negligible category as opposed to one which is adverse or moderate adverse.
So, to be fair to that last answer, Mr. Wright, if we look at the 2017 scheme, what you're indicating is that the level of impact changes from negligible at view 044D, but rises to minor at 044A in respect to the 2017 scheme.
Yes, that was my assessment, yes.
Now, help me then why it is that the same impact insofar as the same view is concerned at 4A for the 2015 scheme is negligible, in other words lower than the 2017 scheme, when it's apparent from the comparisons and the visualizations that the 2015 extension wing on the west would be much more obvious and would take up more of the view of the landscape. Doesn't seem to make sense, does it, that the 2015 scheme would have a lower level of impact than the 2017 scheme? Is that something you want to adjust in your evidence?
This is understandable, is it not? If I read the assessment appropriately, it goes from negligible to minor, which is one category above. So the impact is less. It reflects that. It reflects what you just said. Put very simply, there's rather more green than the previous assessment, using the colour coding.
Going back to evaluation criteria 2 on page 31, negligible is at the low, well, there's no change, then there's negligible change, and then there's a minor change, and then moderate, and then major, in terms of the increasing level of impact. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
And the point I'm putting to you is that notwithstanding the fact that the western wing is much more obvious in the view, or rather more obvious in the view than the 2017 western wing, it's attributed negligible impact, whereas the 2017 scheme is attributed with minor impact. And what I'm pointing out to you is that seems to be the wrong way round, if one's understanding the impact on OUV, and in particular the extent to which the relevant clauses are affected, and in that respect, in particular, the impact on the illusion of countryside and city.
I think it also takes into account the relationship between the wing and St Andrew's House is also part of that assessment. And it also comes in with the improvements to the landscaping surrounding the building, which improve what anyone walking on Waterloo Place would, I should say, Regent Road would see at that point.
So there are other factors being brought into play here. In terms of improvement in public realm, looking at the photograph for the 2015 scheme, what happens is the school gates are removed, some of the 2017 car parking planting are removed, there's a repositioning of lamp post, and that's about it. But that's all replaced with is a very large building of contrasting architectural style. But you say, as I understand your position, you say that the reason that that's beneficial overall is because of these improvements in the public realm, and also the fact that there's a framing of the view between the western extension and St Andrew's House, overlooking somewhat the more obvious change, which is the loss of the landscape, the open landscape and the views over the old town towards Salisbury Crags and Arthur's Seat.
Yes, it comes back to the animation of the streetscape at that point, which the Scheme 1 offered considerably more, and that came out of the workshop process looking at the potential to improve accessibility to the hill and also to the Royal High School. These were factors that came in with that. So in a sense that was something that was factored in, and equally one of the improvements within Scheme 2 is the retention of the boundary wall and the gatepost to the Royal High School. That was something that was seemed to be advantageous when compared to the two schemes.
So that explains why, notwithstanding this quite obvious difference in the appreciation of Salisbury Crags and Carlton Hill, that explains why, in your view at least, we're moving from a negligible to minor beneficial effect in the 2017 assessment.
I think what it confirms is a whole series of issues are being taken into account in assessing the impact of the scheme on OUV. I think it's consistent with that.
In relation to viewpoint 10, I don't want to go into that in any great detail. It's similar to other views that we've looked at, but can I just ask you to confirm this is the view from Arthur's Seat? It's a more long-distance view where there are many relevant clauses of OUV identified, but again, only high value placed on the asset. That's view 10, page 71 of the 2017 assessment.
Sorry, the question you're asking me is...
Well, I'll come to the question in a moment. If you've got the page 62 of the 2015 assessment, page 71 of the 2017 assessment.
Sorry, could you just give me the page numbers again? I missed that.
Yes, of course. Page 71 of the 2017 assessment. And that, electronically, that is 201. And then it's page 62 of the 2015 assessment, which is page 1, electronically 158. Now, starting with the 2015 assessment, do we see that the value of the asset is assessed as being very high?
Yes, I see that.
And then if we compare that with the 2017 assessment, the value of the asset has dropped to high, despite the fact that it's the same clauses from OUV that are identified. Is that also an error? Does that need to be corrected?
I apologise for the error in that table, but very clearly it is shown in the summary of the evaluation on page 131 as being very high. So I agree with you on that. Yes.
And in relation to each of the assessments in the reasoning section, you rely upon, and this is really the only other point I want to explore with you in relation to this viewpoint, you rely upon the fact that the Belvedere Tower is restored to view. Now, as I understand your evidence earlier, the distance from the viewpoint to the Hamilton building and the extent of visibility are factors which you have taken into account in respect of the other assessments of other attributes. Is that correct?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I was focusing on the...
Apologies, I maybe took that too quickly. You acknowledged earlier and explained that your approach took into account the distance between the receptor and the asset, in this case the Hamilton building, and also the extent of visibility when you were performing your assessment in respect of other viewpoints.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
And whilst it's correct to say that the Belvedere would be restored to view on the site itself, in other words, in close proximity to the Belvedere Tower, is it fair to acknowledge that insofar as this viewpoint is concerned, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, perhaps without the benefit of binoculars, to see the Belvedere Tower?
Yes, I accept that.
And therefore, the reporters ought not to place any particular weight on that aspect in assessing whether or not there's a beneficial impact.
I would agree with that.
And insofar as other aspects are concerned, this brings us back to the debate about the stepping back, the extent of visibility, the success of the framing, and those sorts of issues that we've explored in your evidence, about which opinions may differ. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair.
And I think lastly, can you look at 11C, please, from Meadowbank Lawn, rather. Now, here we have, in the relevant clauses from OUV, again, a high number of clauses identified. But in this instance, the value of asset has dropped even further to medium. Again, having regard to the ICMOS guidelines that we looked at this morning, and what we can see in the view are, in other words, this national monument skylined, Nelson's monument, the Royal Hamilton sitting on its ledge, Holyrood House, and the overall composition and the impression of the garden and design landscape can we agree that the value of the asset ought to be identified as very high?
I don't necessarily agree that in terms of the location of the heritage assets with regard to the foreground. That is why it's different to the previous assessments, the previous views.
So to put it bluntly, because of the lot of grass in the photograph in the foreground, that's something that's affected your assessment of the value of these attributes as also seen in the scene.
I think that would be unfair. I think what is primarily in the view point there is the Palace of Holyrood House, is the dominant building within that scene, in which the other elements sit above that. And also this is part of a sequence of views in which other views have been taken into account, which are possibly more typical, I think, as a viewpoint. This is in the middle of a football field where this particular image is taken from.
So again, the emphasis that you place is upon the appreciation of the view from a specific viewpoint. That's what's influencing your assessment of the value of the attributes that we see in the view.
No, it's all of the attributes as they appear within the view. Is what I'm, and it is not purely visual. There are other factors that are brought into account, which are quite clear from the strap lines.
Well, I'll leave that because we've explored the issue of value already to some extent. Insofar as issues of setting are concerned, though, is this also an area where there are issues with the setting of the national monument, whether we are looking at the 2015 or the 2017 assessment? Looking at the 2015 assessment, first of all, the eastern wing is now highly visible, immediately beneath the national monument in close proximity to Holyrood House, thereby raising setting issues for a number of A-listed buildings, including the national monument.
This is why it's noted as having an adverse impact. Those factors are taken into account. And
does the same apply, albeit in your view, to a lesser extent in relation to the 2017 assessment? Again, the impact is minor or adverse, but because the value of the asset is only medium, the cumulative effect is only negligible according to the matrix approach that you explained earlier in your impact assessment.
And part of that assessment relates to there is less interference with the skyline of the hill, which relates to the western playground.
But again, insofar as the 2017 scheme is concerned, whilst it is slightly lower, in fact I'm not even sure it's appreciable, possibly slightly lower in height, what needs to be factored in is that the image that's shown in the impact assessment is not as bright and as clear as the one that's shown in the 2015 assessment.
Yes, but it is there nonetheless, and in the larger images it would show up as it would appear in the particular light conditions that relate to those images.
That's all the substantive cross-examination I have for you, Mr. Wright, apart from just one issue, and this relates to evidence which you gave earlier in your examination chief about the fact that there had been no review carried out of the category of the listed building or the listing itself of the various buildings on site. And as I understood your evidence, it was that the Council and HES had encouraged you not to seek a review because of the sensitivity of this particular proposal. Now, I don't imagine it's a crucial point, but just so there's no suggestion that I've not put Mr. Robb's position to you on this matter, his position is that he made no such overture, he did not say to you that you shouldn't pursue a review. Is it possible that you may have picked things up wrong, or were you not referring to Mr. Robb, or were you referring to the council, or just for a matter of accuracy, would you accept that Mr. Robb certainly did not encourage you not to make a request for review?
I would accept that, and I would accept also that the council made no such overtures. What I'm referring to is a discussion which was held with Andrew Martindale at some stage, not necessarily in the formal workshop, in which he gave me that advice, in that it was raised during the workshop process that it was an issue.
Well, Mr. Robb has no recollection of that. It's not recorded anywhere so far he's aware, but in any event, it may not be of great importance. The bottom line is there was no review, whether it was instigated by a request or otherwise. Is that right?
No, but I think you would accept that in terms of the HES, it is the duties upon the applicant to prove that something, if there is such. It was known all along that there was an issue with the way in which the assets were described within the listing, and that had to be recognised. And I suppose the point that I'm making is, and the evidence is in the is in the reports to committee, is that the consideration of these buildings on the site being A-listed was something that was escalated when there was general knowledge that they were probably not meritorious of that A-listing. And this was something which the council was certainly aware of that. But in the reports, it does lead to this consideration that they are A-listed, which gives them the same status as the building of international significance on the site.
So Rob set out quite clearly in his evidence what his position on all that is. But we come back to the basic point here is that for whatever reason there has been no review of that listing, and the listing is as explained in the evidence.
There's been no review undertaken by HES, and neither has there been a request to carry that out on the basis that there were sensitivities at the time with a scheme that was live, and it does create difficulties in dealing with those matters if they come forward. It's rather different to a matter to delist as it is in terms of challenging a listing in terms of the way that the HESPS is written. This is a rather different situation to that where there is a situation going forward for planning permission within that context, more particularly in relation to something which is so highly sensitive was one of the reasons, I think, regarding that. But in any event, it's not the way that I read the HESPS in terms of that being a formal review process.
I'm content to deal with this in submission, sir. I don't think I need to pursue it as a matter of fact any further. Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mackay. Where are we? 1503. Coburn. How long do you anticipate you might need in cross-examination?
Excuse me. Are we finishing at 4:30, sir?
I'm just wondering whether to postpone the break till you finished at 3:30 or whether to have a break now.
I think a break now would probably be in order, sir.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll break now until 3:15. Thank you. Apparently.
If not cancelled.
Cancelled. Well, it's an option.
Sir, I wonder if I can ask, I'm just very conscious that the witness this is veering towards the end of his second day giving evidence, how much longer there's likely to be in cross-examination. I know that there are at least 3, possibly 4 parties. There may be other members of the public, I don't know. But is there any broad idea, just so Mr. Wright can marshal his energy, enthusiasm and the like, and whether we need to have other breaks, I don't know, but it's quite a long time for any witness to be cross-examined.
Okay, let's just go around with whoever's left. Ms. Coburn, do you have any idea of the length of time you'll require?
I would hope. Oh, good effort, Mr. Lowry. I would hope, sir, to be finished by lunchtime tomorrow.
Okay, right.
So, I would expect to take a little bit less than the time that Ms. Coburn has indicated. So I would expect to finish by the end of tomorrow. I might.
That's assuming a
lunchtime
start.
At the moment, I'm looking at a lot of notes about outstanding universal value where I'm going to be trimming out stuff that Mr. Mackay has already asked. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going there. I'll work on that tonight. I'll give you an indication in the morning.
Mr. Innes.
There are certain matters which have obviously developed today that I think will helpfully shorten matters in the sense of there's a focus to some of the matters which I wanted to raise. But there are aspects, obviously, given commentary on my own client's scheme, that I will require to cross on. It's always hard. I think one of the facets that is causing a bit of problems, the document management's being a bit difficult. It's just trying to probably improve that, and I'll certainly see what I can do tonight to try and bring things together so we don't have to go backwards and forwards to documents, and that's one of the things that I will be focusing on tonight, to try and shorten matters so that we don't have to go back to the same document 2 or 3 times, and that hopefully that will shorten the time. But I think it will be about an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Thank you. Ms. Nimmo, you won't be asking. Okay. Maybe that helps. Maybe it's frightening. Sounds like at least
all I can say,
another day.
I've been at many inquiries over far too many years, as everybody would agree, but I've never come across a witness being on quite so long. I hadn't quite anticipated it being as long as that.
You're obviously concerned, and I can understand that. There are breaks between days.
Yes.
Are you saying that consecutive days have a build-up of...
There's absolutely no doubt about it. It's absolutely inevitable. On the other hand, I simply ask your indulgence if we suggest 5 or 10 minutes here or there that you might bear with us in that regard. But Mr. Wright, I'm sure, will be fine. But equally, it would be unfair to subject him to too much or too lengthy pressure. But I'm sure we'll...
It does look like it'll be another day or even...
Sounds to me like Friday lunchtime, actually, being realistic. Because I dare say you'll have a few questions and...
Quite possibly, yes.
And maybe re-examination. It's a very long haul. But if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. And this is an important case. Scotland's most important building, or one of them, and we've got to get it right, and we don't want to deny anyone an opportunity to ask relevant questions. And I'm very grateful to my learned friend Mr. Innes for suggesting document management, because that has been a problem. It's obvious to everybody that Mr. Wright's working from hard copies, as indeed am I, and it would be very useful to get the correct references. If anyone can give us a list of documents in advance, then that would facilitate things, and we'll have them ready to save delays and Mr. Wright having to look around for the correct documents.
That would help.
Done, sir. Mr. Wright, Mr. Steele, whoever, I've got a list of documents. You're not going to need visualisations, so at least that'll help with your table. Would you like the list now? Okay. I do.
No, so you're going to read it?
Yes, I am. No. Yes.
Sorry, can you just hold for 1 second? Mr. Wright, how do you feel about a day and a half sitting there? We're all talking about you.
Well, so it's broken my record. The public inquiries is likely to do so. The concern for me is more having to live alone, I think, during that period.
Yes. Have we got any friends who aren't involved with the inquiry?
I currently have no friends.
Oh. Can I then just suggest that if you feel at any point that you need to have an additional break, please ask. And if you feel that the cumulative effect needs a longer break, then let us know and we'll see what we can do about that.
Certainly be grateful, sir, not to go on too late tonight or tomorrow night. Whatever Mr. Wright may say or feel this must be having a cumulative impact, as they say, and I would ask that recognition is given to that. That's the only cumulative impacts there are in this case, you understand. But I would very much welcome the list of documents from Ms Coburn. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr Coburn, thank you.
Thank you. It's not long, you'll be pleased to know. Mr Wright, obviously you need your written evidence, so that will be your topic paper or report. I tend to use the phrases interchangeably, so that's what I'm talking about. Your precognition and your rebuttal precognition. You'll also need Mr Lowry's topic paper, the Statement of Appeal for Scheme 2, which is document CD 570. CD 570. I too am working off hard copies, but I'm working off CD 197. You might need AHSS 20, which is a paper by Repton, and I'm told that's available only electronically, but I'll try to avoid having to go there. You will need the 2013 British Standards, which is CD 540.
Is this document all for the next hour and a half or so?
No.
This will go on in tomorrow?
This will go into tomorrow.
Okay.
Do you want me to continue with the list, or would you prefer that I do another list in the morning?
Well, I think that would probably be easier, because what I'm doing is opening them up as we go along.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'm a Luddite, so I just have paper, sir.
Remarkably few in front of you.
Well, there you go.
If you are able to just separate the list for the rest of today from tomorrow, we can do the same exercise tomorrow. That might be just a bit easier to manage.
That should probably do us, sir, just now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have documents? Everyone ready? Are you ready to examine?
Yes, thank you, sir. Mr. Wright, good afternoon. Obviously, I hope this won't take long. You say in your topic paper at paragraph 2.10, in case you want to check for accuracy, that you are a long-standing member of the AHSS. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
And you also say in your topic paper in the same paragraph that you have submitted papers to the journal Architectural Heritage, which you describe as the learned journal of the AHSS.
That's correct, yes.
Are you still a member, Mr. Wright?
Surprisingly, perhaps, yes, I am.
Thank you very much. Take this relatively shortly because I think we'll be fed up dealing with timelines, but we know that you were formally instructed towards the end of May 2014. That's correct, isn't it?
That's my recollection, yes.
Okay, if you could have in front of you, please, your inquiry report at paragraph 4.8. Do you have that, yes? Okay, so at the start of that paragraph you say the contribution I was able to make to the monthly workshops was limited at first, pending a period of familiarisation with a project that was already well underway. How long, Mr. Wright, did you spend on that period of familiarisation?
It was relatively short to begin to get a handle of the building and of the site and of the setting and of the views. The whole exercise was done. It's one of these things that you start and then you realise you have to do further investigation. So most of the views would have been dealt with by June. Some were done in November as you look once again at some of the things that you've uncovered in the information. So you're constantly going back and looking at things. But the initial period, I think it was by the July meeting I was able to put forward some initial structure to what might be the heritage aspects to be considered in the case, and then share that at that design workshop, and then continue to build on that evidence and feed into the workshop process thereafter.
Yes, indeed, because the next sentence at paragraph 4.8, you say, in parallel with attending the workshops, I had embarked upon a programme of carrying out historical research. And so you were undertaking essentially a twin tracking role there, weren't you? You were familiarising yourself and you were conducting your research.
Yes, I think it's worth pointing out to the inquiry that as so often happens these days, especially when you're working with architects who are skilled in dealing with buildings that involve change to the historic environment, they will have had considerable experience in knowing what to address in any application coming forward. So there are probably two things to bear in mind there. I think first was that there were two conservation plans which had been prepared for the site by LDN architects, one of which was for the hill and the other was for the RHS itself. So these are all already in existence at that time. But equally, and it's always been my experience that the firm of Hoskins Architects carry out very good historic research themselves, and that had been the case up until the time that I was appointed. So to a degree, it wasn't as I was hitting the ground running in this process of familiarisation. There's plenty of material available with which to relate and to begin to build up the evidence on the site.
Yeah, thank you for that. The point was simply that you were undergoing or carrying out a kind of twin-pronged process at the time that you mentioned in your report at paragraph 4.8, and that's correct, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Could you have a look, please, at the second statement of appeal, which is document CD 570? And if you look at page 2 on that, and really it's paragraphs 8 and 9, and I've just asked you to look at that so that you can check for yourself for accuracy. But in summary, in 2010, DHP was awarded preferred bidder status, and then they undertook discussions about project funding, and then the development contract was awarded, and then they entered into the partnership with Urbanist, and then ultimately Rosewood was selected as the operator. So those advising me say that, in their opinion, 2010 therefore saw the conclusion of the functional brief. Would that be your understanding?
I'm sorry, but I can't. I was not party to that, and I can't answer that. I think the question would be more appropriately directed at Mr. Gibb of Hoskins Architects.
Well, that's very fair, and it's something that I will ask him or somebody later on in the appellant's witnesses, because it's something I would like to ask. So long as there is somebody who will be available to answer the question, that would be fine.
Well, I don't think we're short of witnesses. I'll think about it and let you know privately who the best witness would be, but probably the architect from Hoskins.
I'm grateful. Thank you. We spent, I think it was yesterday, but if my time scales have gone awry, I beg your pardon. I'm probably doing slightly better in terms of you and the day of the week, Mr. Wright, at the moment. But in terms of the Propylaea, are you okay? Yeah, are you okay?
I just remember which day it was.
So We discussed that, I think, in some detail with Mr Mackay yesterday, and I'm not revisiting it, and it's more a point of order than anything else. But since I'm not asking you any questions on it, simply to save time and avoid duplication, please do not think that the AHSS has revisited its position on this matter. It still remains exactly as set out in the written evidence. And of course, Mr Steele has the opportunity to ask Mr Lowry questions on that if he chooses. The status of the heritage statement for both applications. If you have a look, please, at your report, again, purely to enable you to check accuracy, but you've variously described your report as plugging the gaps in knowledge and enhancing levels of understanding. And such as the statement of appeal at paragraph 25 and 85 for the record, notes that the heritage statement is one of the bases of the vision for the hotel design and the treatment of the Hamilton building, and it is a unique and professional research. I take it there is nothing within which I've just described which you would disagree with.
I wouldn't say so, no. Yep.
But just by way of an aside, just because something is unique, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is accurate.
I don't think I conveyed that in the answer that I gave the inquiry.
I'm grateful. I'm just trying to understand what you were meaning and your team was meaning in the use of the word unique, so that's very helpful. Given the descriptions that you and your colleagues have given to the heritage statement and the importance that has been attributed to it, can we agree that it needs to be properly tested?
I think we need to bear in mind the purpose for which it serves. It is not an academic paper, it is something which is part of a planning application and was prepared with that primarily in mind.
Yes, that's understood. I have read your rebuttal recognition on that, and we may revisit that. Again, I'm not going to talk to you about the detail of the listing, but we're content to say that the Hamilton building and those within its curtilage are all A-listed. Is that your position?
Within what I've said, within my various papers, that is my understanding, with the qualifications that are attached to that, yes.
Could you have in front of you, please, Mr Lowry's topic paper? It's probably fair enough to say that I don't think it's going to be terribly far away from what you're looking at from now on. Okay, could you turn to page 10, please? And if you look towards the bottom of page 10, you see section 5.2, and it's easier just to read it. Mr Lowry there says, the former Royal High School sits with Glasgow School of Art as one of relatively few Scottish buildings that are recognised as of international standing by the wider architectural community. It is recognised as one of the most important Greek Revival buildings anywhere, and a key monument of the Romantic classical movement of the early 19th century. And goes on to say, in the context of the Enlightenment and post-Enlightenment Edinburgh, and Edinburgh's much vaunted claim to be the Athens of the North, it is more important than any other single building as a city. And at that point he provides a reference to an article by Miles Glendinning. Do you take any issue with what Mr Lowry says there, Mr Wright?
think in the first paragraph of 5.2, it does become possible to expand that understanding of buildings within Scotland that might meet that criteria. And one of the buildings which I may place within that same criteria of being recognised internationally of being important is the work of Alexander Greek Thomson. The word Greek is interesting because of his use of what he did with Greek architecture, but nonetheless I think there is a recognition that perhaps his buildings also might come into that category.
Turn over the page and you'll see 6, I think, bullet points under the section 5.3. Without reading them out to save some time, do you take issue with any of those points?
No, because I believe they're all covered within the text of the Heritage Statement in one way or another.
Splendid. Could you have a look, please, at section 5.3.1 on the bottom of page 11? And that's where Mr. Lowry starts to discuss comments made by James Ferguson, and obviously it runs over the page. Now, again, to save time, and I'm happy to look at it in more detail if you choose, but a fair summary, would it not be, would be that Mr. Ferguson was not really a great fan of the Greek revival, or indeed of revivalism generally. And he gave high praise to Hamilton's building, but he still concluded that it was merely a modern building behind a classical screen. What's interesting, though, Mr. Wright, according to Mr. Lowry, in this respect, and what Ferguson says about the Hamilton building, is that it was identified as one of the buildings in the UK worthy of note by a man who was not a proponent of revivalism, and that it was its strength and its relationship to the site that he identified as being important. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that, yeah.
And then, obviously, we move on to Sir Albert Richardson, slightly further down page 12 of Mr. Lowry's report. And Mr. Lowry's position is maybe slightly different from yours, in that he thinks the most, or the more important insight of Sir Albert Richardson was his comments on site composition on the one hand and the monumentality of the building on the other. Do you agree with that?
I think I have covered that in my report. I also quote from Richardson at some length and appreciate what he had, his insight into the building. I think we use very similar words. I think I use the words that it was insightful, and so does Mr. Lowry on that.
In fact, Sir Albert Richardson was so impressed with Hamilton's building that he even included it in his introduction in his book, didn't he? In particular, he singled it out for its dynamic composition and its monumentality.
Yes, he did, yes.
And Joe Mordaunt Cook said pretty much the same things, albeit a bit later than Sir Albert Richardson.
Yes, and you'll note I've also quoted that in my heritage statement.
Yes, indeed. Could you look, please, at section 5.3.4, and this is where Mr. Lowry discusses Claude Mignot. And I'm advised that Mr. Mignot wrote one of the major 20th century works on 19th century architecture across the Western world. And if you look at section 5.3.4 of Mr. Lowry's topic paper, you will see that there is a caption that is attributed to Monsieur Mignot. And that says, "The picturesque way the masses and colonnades are handled owes a great deal to the Acropolis in Athens, known directly or, in this case, indirectly, and was to remain one of the essential dimensions of the Greek revival in Scotland." That's quite a telling observation, isn't it?
And it's also consistent with the evidence that I've put forward in the heritage statement.
And then the final source to whom Mr. Lowry refers in his topic paper is Henry Russell Hitchcock. And taking it shortly and looking at the final paragraph, Mr. Lowry says that Hitchcock's comments really say it all, because they explain that the Hamilton building is of international importance, stylistically, even archaeologically significant in its use of sources. It's part of a coherent urban design, and it's part of a wider romantic impetus in city design that connects with ideas of the picturesque and with wider cultural ideas related to identity, both local and national. Do you have anything you would wish to observe in that regard?
Other than to note that it is on page 52 of the Heritage Statement, the acknowledging Hitchcock's recognition of the building.
Yes, you see, Mr. Wright, that's quite an important point, because you didn't mention Mignoux or Ferguson in your Heritage Statement, did you?
No, but I've also mentioned a great deal of other sources that Mr. Lowry has not done here, which he's accepted also. So I'd have thought it would be a little unfair to point the finger at me of missing two sources that have not been referred to.
Well, I'll just take the next point and then I'll combine them with the question, because you also, in your hundreds of pages of heritage statement, written over many years, omitted that Richardson included Hamilton in his introduction, didn't you?
I did, but I was aware of the quote.
Yes, so really what I'm saying to you, Mr. Wright, is that I think it is unfair for you to suggest that the reporters ascribe the same importance to a topic paper written in connection with a planning inquiry to a professional and unique heritage statement authored over the course of many years and with the benefit of access to a site that Mr. Lowry has not had. That's not quite a fair comparison, is it?
I'd have thought it would give me something of an advantage to have access to the site and to look at the evidence of the building in all its phases and to understand that probably better than anyone from that point of view.
Quite so, in terms of the access, yes. If you look at your heritage statement document CD 197 at page 21, please.
So just while that's being done, just to let you know, I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but I've just received an alert on my phone in relation to the weather and the severe impact on the railways. I don't know how many people are travelling by rail. A number of lines are suspended and the travel advice is not to travel. Now, I don't know whether that affects progress at the inquiry. So far as our team is concerned, say for one individual, it doesn't affect us at all, but it may or may not affect you and others. I don't know.
We were made aware that there were some delays or cancellations on the railway. I mentioned that when we resumed after the break.
Yeah,
if anyone's got a particular issue, then they'll need to let us know. But otherwise we carry on as we anticipated, finishing at around 5. And good luck.
Well, I'm all right, as they say, but others may not be.
Well, if there are any issues with anyone in particular, then just let us know. Yes, please carry on.
Okay, thank you. Page 21, please, of CD 197. Okay, you talk there of Richard Payne Knight and Ugadale Price, forgive my pronunciation. And anyone reading the heritage statement without the benefit of your knowledge and experience would be forgiven for concluding, wouldn't they, that there were 2 members of this grouping, because you haven't mentioned at all Humphrey Repton, have you?
No, not excuse me. No, not in this context, because I'm beginning the discussion on that, which was between these 2 individuals and was in a very, very public domain at that time. It was something which was quite prominent.
It's fair to say, Mr. Wright, and this makes me smile, that Knight and Price didn't like Repton very much, in the sense that they didn't agree with each other, did they? In the sense that Repton Repton's defence of capability, Brown, was criticised by them, wasn't it?
There was quite a ding-dong which was going on between the parties, and the other person was the painter Gilpin was also involved in that.
And Knight and Price, their kind of bromance, if we can put it in modern parlance, they kind of fell out or split up in 1804, didn't they? That was when they had their disagreement.
That may well be the case.
But in 1794 they were still happily romancing away.
I believe so.
In your document CD 197 at page 21, you also mentioned the two books even authored by Payne Wright and by Price, but you don't mention sketches and hints, which is document AHS 19 by Humphrey Repton. Is there a reason for omitting that book?
No, there's no specific reason in doing so. I'm using a number of sources that are the background to this, so there's no reason to either include it or omit it.
Okay, I'm interested in exploring the slightly different position that Repton takes, compared to Price and Knight, in that if I could summarise, and I'm probably going to get a row for misrepresenting Mr. Lowry's advice here, but Repton argued against the idea of designing a landscape to look like a picture, didn't he?
I believe he did, yeah.
And one of the things that Repton, I'm told, was interested in was pointing out and illustrating, and I think it was called a red book, but no doubt I'll be corrected if I've got this wrong, that a painting is taken from a fixed point, and it represents only about 20% or thereabouts of what you would actually see from that point in real life. Do you agree?
I would not wholly agree with that in terms of my understanding of picturesque landscape and so forth. And going back into the 17th century, where the origins of this were given in terms of Claude and other painters, it really comes from that into this later period.
Yeah, forgive me, I maybe didn't make myself quite clear in my question. Let me try again. I'm talking about what Repton said. I'm not asking if you agree with what Repton said. I'm not asking if that's how the picturesque movement started out. I'm asking you purely in the context of the poor old admitted Humphrey Repton, that his view was that a painting is taken from a fixed point and you wouldn't see in real life from that same point something like 20% in the picture. In other words, a picture would cut it off by about 20%.
That may be so. I'm not an expert on Humphrey Repton.
And Repton also pointed out that a painter can control the light source, and he can bring light in from whatever direction he wants, sometimes more than one direction at the same time.
And this is exactly what Hamilton did in his own perspectives, and I think it's very instructive to look at the way in which the Royal High School was illustrated after it had been completed, and the Kemp illustration is a very good indication of that. And there are others in the Heritage Statement that indicate that the use of light sort of floods onto things like Holyrood House, and when you come to the jail buildings, you paint them in a dark colour because you have a particular view on either their merit or what they are, and you don't want them to be prominent within that landscape picture. So yes, I'm aware that there are artificial humouring of images, and I think there are several indications of that which are within the Heritage Statement.
Yes, indeed, quite so about the light in Michael Kemp, and we'll come back to him later. The other point that Mr. Lowry made to me about Repton is that the structure of a painting, for example, the often broken natural details of the foreground in a painting, that wouldn't work in real life, and it would often be very convenient. Do you have any opinion on that perspective?
I can't say that I do.
Now, I've had a crash at French. I'm now going to have a wee dabble into Italian, so bear with me for my pronunciation. So, picturesque is defined from the Italian word pittoresco, correct?
It could well be.
And the literal meaning is like a picture.
My knowledge of Italian isn't that good, but I would imagine that would be the case also.
And that would be part of the reason, wouldn't it be, for references to framing the views? In other words, if you put a frame around a view, it becomes more like a picture.
Yes, any framed view is something that the artist wishes to capture within that line of view.
Okay, if you could lay your hands, please, on Mr. Lowry's topic paper, this time at section 6.4. And you'll see there the source of my starting questions in this topic. The literal meaning of the word picturesque from the Italian pittoresco means like a painting. And if you look at the final sentence of paragraph 6.4, it's Mr. Lowry's position that the appellants, meaning you and your colleagues, have persisted in your interpretation of the Hamilton building in a somewhat outdated notion of how buildings were experienced in the landscape.
I wouldn't know if it's outdated or not, but I do know what it is I'm representing in the images that are being described in the heritage statement. And I'm not sure I even understand what Mr. Lowry is intending in this particular phrase. It's almost beyond me to comprehend what that might be. And that's maybe my intelligence is not the same as his. But what I do know is that in terms of the views that are being assessed within the Heritage Impact Assessment, for instance, there is a very acute understanding of moving within the landscape and what is within the view, and also what is not within the view, and also how that would have been represented and what the onlooker would see. So there is a much broader awareness than perhaps is you may be directing me towards. So I don't know if there is a connection between these two or exactly where the line of inquiry is going, but that is my reading of that, and perhaps I haven't understood what is in 6.4.
Well, if we look at it in a little more detail then, Mr. Lowry says at the start, obviously, the literal meaning of picturesque, etc. And then his next sentence reads, it is exactly that original meaning, so first, that the appellants seem to be deploying in their interpretation of how the Royal High School was designed to be seen. So what Mr. Lowry is saying is that the very theory put forward by Knight, Price and not by Repton is the one that you and your colleagues have adopted here.
I don't believe that to be the case. No.
Can we agree simply, Mr. Wright, that Repton challenges the wisdom of his two contemporaries in terms of how a building should be experienced, with his two contemporaries on the one hand suggesting a literal, almost static experience compared to the more I hesitate to say moving experience in terms, for fear that you think it's emotional, but literally the journey, the experiential journey that is being portrayed by such as Stark and by Repton initially.
Is the word immersive in a sense?
Have a look, Mr. Wright, at your rebuttal precognition. And if you look at page 6, and we see at the bottom of that you are rebutting, I think, paragraph 4.5 of Mr. Lowry's report. Now, am I right in that?
Yes, that's correct.
And maybe a third of the way down that paragraph, you say, they confirm, meaning the images in APP 53, that no more than 2/3 of the elevation could be glimpsed at any one time. That's exactly the point, isn't it, Mr. Wright? Because Stark's concept is based upon a gradual relevation, and that's why, in a sense, he's teasing you by allowing you to see only 2/3.
Yes, and I have covered that in the heritage statement in various parts of it.
And so you would agree then that the back or the oblique view is a prelude to the spectacular frontal view. It's an emerging picture, if you like.
Yes, and that is recognised also in the description given in Colin McWilliams' perambulation, which is also within the heritage statement. It's a similar experience of how the view unfolds and how the building relates to that view unfolding.
If you have a look at figures 6 and 7 in the appendix to the rebuttal, in figure 6, can we agree that the main block of the Hamilton building can be seen rising up above the wings?
Sorry, rising up above the I didn't catch what you said, I'm sorry.
I described them as wings.
You're asking me to agree that the wings would be visible.
Sorry,
That
I
parts
mean
of the wing would be visible.
the wings of the prison. So the main part of the Hamilton building can be seen rising up above the wings of the prison.
I think what is critical here is not the wings of the prison, it is the walls of the prison that encircle the jail, and it is also having regard to the area in front of the jail, which was given over to shrubbery, of which there is an image. I suspect it may appear in more than one location in the evidence to the inquiry in terms of the height of those shrubs, which appears in Shepherd's image of 1829. Two images of 1829.
Can we agree, Mr. Wright, that the main block of the Hamilton building can be seen rising up above the walls, then, of the prison complex?
No, it doesn't rise above the walls. It cannot rise above the walls. It has to be seen between the walls and between the wall of the street on Stevenson's Road. It's impossible for it to rise above the walls of the jail. It may do so in views from the immediate west from the North Bridge, and maybe there's an element of confusion in that. What I'm referring to here in these images is what you see on certain points of the road where the maximum reveal occurs. On other points of the road, it doesn't happen to anything like the same extent. When I studied this some years before Mr. Lowry had put the images to the inquiry, I did exactly the same exercise. And what I set out to do by doing that exercise was to try and examine how that had changed over a period of time, and then how St Andrew's House has an impact on what you see of the Royal High School. And the purpose of making the reporters, the inquiry aware by figure 9, is that this, as I indicate in this particular document, that image was taken in November 2014, and I think it will be of interest to the reporters that the Royal High School is now completely invisible in that view at a time of sort of late summer, where you see no part of the west wing of that building. It is not possible to see it at all. And you'll see also the degree to which the portico of the gate lodge occupies up to around 1/4 of whatever volume. In this particular view, it's going to be slightly more than that, more like 1/3 of what you see now of the west wing of the Royal High School.
Is it your position, Mr. Wright, that the walls of the prison blocked the view, or the prison complex blocked the view of the main block of the Hamilton building?
No, not entirely. I think it reduced what was visible of it. So it was a constantly changing scene, to which the point where the building comes into play slightly and then goes out of play completely as you move through the experience of coming through on Stevenson's Road.
And just so that we're clear, when we're looking at your figure 6, the lines that you have drawn on figure 6, these are presumably intended to display visibility at any point along the lines that you have drawn?
No, they display visibility, I think, as you see where the cone of view comes back to a viewpoint. And I think it is coincidental, but it happens to be the case that the point where figure 9 is taken from is within a metre or so of the point on the 1852 Ordnance Survey map where that zone of maximum visibility occurs, from standing at that point just outside Howie's Restaurant is a few metres to the east of that, which gives that point of maximum visibility. So that's the start point of trying to interpret what would have been seen in Hamilton's day. And I think what, to my mind, is equally important, I think it gives a real insight as to Hamilton's building, is that the one factor in all of this is not just Stark that positioned his building on the site. It's not been referred to.
We will deal, I promise, with Stark and other factors, but
it's not Stark I'm dealing with.
No,
perhaps
but
I could continue. I mean, if it is to, it's to do with Miller's Now, which is referred to also as Baxter's Now, which is on the early, which sets also the position of the Royal High School within that setting. So whether it was entirely to do with Stark's, it'll come back to that point. I'm happy to debate that, to answer questions on that. But there are other factors also that position the building on that site, and not simply the location of it in relation to the road and to Stark's principles.
Just so that I've got this noted down for my purposes, could you confirm again, please, the extent to which the gate lodge in that view would block the view of the Hamilton building?
In my view, it would be more than a quarter would be visible.
More than a quarter would not be visible?
Sorry. It varies from the location where you are. In that particular view, it would have been 3/4 of the view of the Royal High School would be visible. Of the original west flank, it would be of the whole of the west elevation. It is maybe 2/3 of that, which is what the zone of visibility. So, from obviously the gate lodge has an impact on what you see now. It's part of interrupting that clear view to Hamilton's building.
Without wanting, because I did promise that we wouldn't look at visualisations, I'm happy to look at them if that's your preference. But how much of that view that is currently obscured by the gate lodge would be visible under the 2015 and the 2017 proposals?
The views are the same as shown in view 4A, I think it is, of the heritage impact assessment. So the assessment of that view has been made from the roughly the same point as appears in this image.
So, of the Hamilton building with the 2015 western wing in play, how much would you see of the Hamilton building from the viewpoint in figure 6?
You would not see a great deal of the Hamilton building from that point because of the way in which I would need to look at the visualization once again to be able to comment on that for certain, but it's my view that
could we perhaps do that, because we do have a figure from you in terms of the amount of the Hamilton building currently obscured by the gate lodge, and I'd like to do the comparison with the 2015 proposal Western Wing and the 2017 proposal Western Wing, if you don't mind.
Sorry, I'm not turning this off. I apologise for that. If those images could be made available to large scale, then we could look at that.
Does anyone happen to have a reference for those?
There'll be an environmental statement, I think.
Do you happen to have those, Ms. Coburn? Have you got a reference for those?
Well, I was I was relying on Mr. Wright to take me where he wanted to go to, since it's me asking him to provide the figures, but what I've got in front of me is CD 30 for the 2015 scheme. And CD 179 for the 2017 scheme. And then for the 2015 scheme,
Is it 4A or 4D?
carry on, please.
If one looks at the before and after images in relation to those two views, which are just for the record, they're both 4D for schemes 1 and scheme 2. It will reveal that both the gate lodge and the Hamilton building are virtually invisible in terms of the length of view. Bear in mind that my figure 9 in the appendix is simply to draw out by zoomed lens, which I have made quite clear the evidence and the caption that accompanies that image. That is something which tries to focus on what might be seen. So the space that would be occupied by that within the cone of vision is very narrow because of the pylons which sit in front of St Andrew's House, interfering with that view, which would have worsened the situation from how it was in 1829 and on the 1852 maps. So this is at some distance from the viewpoint. And just to confirm to the inquiry that both the scheme's west wings would occupy the space where that would have been that would have been seen at that point.
Okay, just staying with the 2015 visualisations. Apologies, Mr. Wright. Can we go back, please, and have a look at visualisation 4C? It's the previous page, and it's the before and after. It's just from a slightly different point in the continuum of experiences, I would prefer to refer to it. It's literally, it's in the same document that you were at, it's just the previous page. So if you have it? Okay, so if we look at the left-hand page as I'm looking at it, we do see the gate lodge, and we do see, don't we, Mr. Wright, part of the western elevation of the Hamilton building. Because of vegetation.
It's because because of the vegetation which has grown up there. So there is a glimpse of it in this image here.
Okay, so let's just have a look at the images that you presented to the inquiry, because what I'm after here, and apologies for labouring the point, I'm interested, is that you have made certain criticisms of the gate lodge. It is you and your client's position that the gate lodge ought to be demolished. And you point out that the gate lodge is impeding the view of Hamilton's building to a certain extent, and you gave a figure. What I'm interested in exploring with you, Mr. Wright, is the extent to which the Western Wing 2015 proposal would block the view of the western elevation of the Hamilton building, because when I'm looking at this visualisation 4C, I'm not seeing any part of the Hamilton building from that part of Waterloo Place or Regent Road at all.
No, that is correct, but I think there is some element of confusion as to all the references to where the gate lodge interferes with the view of the Hamilton building is not from this direction. All of the references, not in terms of the gate lodge. There's no reference to the gate lodge obscuring the view of the Royal High School from this direction in any of the documents. You have to move to the other side of the pavement, and you have to look at how you experience the Royal High School from the other side of the pavement, which is shown very clearly in Figure 7 of APP 53 as to what Hamilton intended. All of the descriptions that relate to interfering with the view are onto the north elevation and the temple which is on the rise that he created. So I'm sorry if that causes confusion, but I'm absolutely clear in my mind that that is the intention of what is meant by the gate lodge interfering. It's incidental in these views. It just happens to get slightly in the way, but it's not a material consideration in terms of what you see. It's in those other views that we then get into the concept of the position of that building on the site. And also, this brings us back to start, because then that brings me back to my description, which is in the heritage statement, about a front and a flank. I know Mr. Lowry takes exception to how I've interpreted that, but I believe my interpretation to be correct in terms of what is seen, and it becomes very clear from studying that analysis as to what the position of the building was meant to be on the site and what you're meant to see with it.
Okay, can I just make a general point? and do feel free to disagree with me, but just humour me. If you were walking along from Princes Street, along Waterloo Place and towards the Hamilton Building, what would impinge upon views more of the Hamilton Building? Would it be the Gate Lodge? Would it be the 2015 proposal or the 2017 proposal?
I think in terms of having an impact on the view of the Hamilton Building, there's probably not a great deal between the 2015 and the 2017 schemes, because that is to do with the positioning of the wing within the configuration of the site. But if you approach the building on the opposite side, and this is where the views change, which the view sequence changes from the one side of Regent Road, which is the east side of Regent Road, and then the views that are taken for consideration in terms of impact switch to the other pavement. And I think there is some logic in that, because what it does is it changes the views of what you see, and it is in those views that there is really very little difference between Scheme 1 in 2015 and Scheme 2 in 2017, in that both are directed towards the gap that opens up between the rear of the Hamilton Building and the retaining wall. So it is the temple that comes into view at that point. You cannot see the temple until you get to that point, and the optimum position in any part of the sequence on Regent Road is when you get to the west side of the pavement in front of St Andrew's House. That's the point that it really reveals itself.
I promise this is going to be my last question of the afternoon.
Thank you very much.
But in 1829, when you were padding along what we now know as Waterloo Place and Regent Road, what side of the road would you be walking on? The prison side or the hillside?
I think it depends on where you're going at the end of the journey. Because if you are, sorry, it isn't a facetious answer, and I will tell you why. Because if you go on the west side, there's probably a presumption that you will be taking the wonderful new Carlton New drive that has been forged out of the landscape, freshly blasted out of the face of the hill. When on the process of going up the hill, you will have a most pleasant view of the north elevation of the Hamilton Building, and over the top of that, between the views of the temple, we'll see the landscape beyond. That is one view that you might experience. On the other view, on the other side, you will arrive and you will have this experience not only of the Hamilton Building within its context, which suddenly appears in front of you from that view. You will understand why it's there within its particular setting, but your focus is also on the view which is about to be revealed on that side. So I think it really does depend on whether you're going beyond that point and walking down Regent Road, down the incline of the hill from that angle.
I think we'll leave it at that. Doubtless you will anticipate that Mr. Lowry will be explaining his position, but for today's purposes I think we should leave it at that and return to this tomorrow, if that's okay with you, sir.
If that's a convenient point, then yeah. Well, it's only past 4, and we know that we're taking a long time, but if that's what we must do, then we'll resume in the morning.
I think, in fairness, I'm about to start a fairly lengthy period of cross-examination and topic of cross-examination, so I wouldn't, I think, in fairness, be able to finish it until after 5, and I don't think that's in anybody's interest, sir.
Okay, well, thank you very much then. In that case, we'll call it a day and resume again at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.